So now I'd just like to go on to the next work package, which is sensors for mooring line monitoring. We were interested in looking at a range of different measurements which we could do at sea. These went from the axial loads, axial strains, internal contact pressure, and those three were sufficiently well developed to install them on the buoy. And then we also, in parallel, did quite a lot of work on optical fiber strain measurements and acoustic emission. So the first of these so-called innovative sensors was in fact one which didn't require any development at all, which was off-the-shelf load cells, as we needed the load measurements so that we could correlate and synchronize with the strain measurements, and also to have a recording of what the line was actually seeing. So all we did with those is, which were bought by FEM, and we checked the calibration on our 100-ton load frame, and then we did some work with the data acquisition system to make sure we could get a synchronization between the different measurements. So that was fairly straightforward. The second one was axial strain measurements. We have two types of transducer. The first is a wire displacement transducer. It's something which we use on the test frames for measurements in the lab. So the main difficulty was making it waterproof and fixing it so we have a measurement over a reasonable length. So this was the initial concept. This is what it looks like when it was on the test bench. So we have a frame which is about 30 centimeters long, so we get a stable clamping. And then we have the transducer, which is the white cylinder here, and then you can just see the wire, which is going to a second clamp, which is a couple of meters further down. So that's a fairly accurate system, which we've used before for measurements offshore. And on the right, you can see the installation when it was put on the mooring line in situ. So the second clamp you can see to the far right, and you can just see the steel wire which the diver is putting into place. So that was something which we'd used before, and so we in the past we've used it as an autonomous measurement, but here it was wired to the buoy so we could get synchronization with the other measurements. A second way of measuring displacements on a system such as this is by ultrasound. So we have a system with a emitter reflector which is on one clamp, and then a target on a second clamp. This is something which we have used to some extent in the past. It was calibrated. We have a tower in the estuary in Brest, and so we were able to perform some tests in sea, as this works only in water. And then we had a second system with a wire displacement transducer, so we could correlate and calibrate and check the measurements we were making on this system. And then on the right, you can see the installation on the mooring line. So the diver's just putting the target in place. The transducers here down on the right. We can use one or two transducers, so we can get an average of the two, which gives us some more confidence in the results. But the important thing was that gave us two independent strain measurements on the same mooring line, so we could get at least some validation and some confidence in the results. The third system, which is perhaps more innovative, is the pressure sensors, which were developed by NCD, which is a small company in Brest. And the idea is to put a transducer inside the rope. So we did a lot of testing, preliminary testing on sub ropes. And the idea is to measure the pressure between the strands. And that gives you something which you can correlate directly with the modeling, but it also gives you a handle on the load in the sub rope, as you can calibrate it to get up to back to the force. The difficulty is then inserting this into the rope. And so this is the picture of the braiding machine at Bexco. And you can see the transducer is being placed between sub-rope strands here. They've stopped the braiding, and then they continue the braiding and take out the wire. And you can see down here on the bottom the two of the transducers when they were after the full braiding of the mooring line. And then these were calibrated on the Bexco test frame, and then we did some other calibration tests at Ifremer. So this was the third of these instrumentation types that we used on the buoy mooring lines. Then we had initially the idea to use the polyamide fibers as waveguides to measure elongation. As you can do it with glass fibers, but the elongations aren't long enough. We tried it on the polymer yarns, and it didn't work very well. The attenuation was too high. So eventually we went to PMMA fibers, and then we did quite a lot of work on calibrating those, looking at attenuation, the mechanical properties of the fibers, looking how seawater aging affects the mechanical properties, and also looking at sensitivity to abrasion. And then at the end of the project, we did the first tests on fibers inside ropes, in this case inside braided ropes, in order to check we could also actually do it inside a rope. There's still a lot of work to do on this, and it wasn't complete in time to go on the buoy, but it's work which is ongoing. And the main difficulty is upgrading that to large ropes and understanding what you're measuring when you work on large twisted ropes. So that was done there was a postdoc for 18 months at the University of Nantes and Saint-Nazaire who worked on this project, and we also worked on it at Ifremer. And the final type of instrumentation was acoustic emission. We worked with the University of Gustave Eiffel, who have a lot of experience of this for steel cables, as they use it as an in situ alarm system. And so they developed a kind of clamp, a special clamp, so we could use it on the sub-ropes. We worked on the sub-ropes initially. We went on sub-ropes up to failure, and then we transferred it to the full-scale rope. And this is an example on the 100-ton test frame, where we have 4 transducers, which allow us to localize the damage. We got very nice acoustic emission signals, which we could then post-treat and look at the amplitude analysis and the energy analysis, and we're now trying to correlate this with the different mechanisms, particularly fiber breakage and abrasion. So that was working quite well. It was developed quite nicely at the laboratory scale, but it needs to be upscaled, so we didn't use it either on the buoy. So finally, on the we had 2 instrumented mooring lines on the nylon parts of the mooring line. And that included the load cell, the internal pressure sensors, and the 2 types of strain measurements or displacement measurements, which we could then superimpose and correlate with the other measurements to then go back and correlate with the model. And so I think the next section, Jean-Sébastien and Romain will talk about the buoy and the dimensioning of that, and what we actually measured on the buoy at sea.